from a beginning of being late for a deadline, to a rocky production, to the ending product being a star that never got to shine and got left on the shelf for longer than it should have. This is the Red Trees. Let's talk about it. Hello, and welcome to this new show interview we're doing on the films. Hopefully it'll become more of a regular thing, semi-regular, where we interview actors, directors, camera operators, lighting, sound, anyone we can about projects and things they've been part of and participated in making, their experiences, their way of seeing what was happening, because it's interesting. Sitting down with someone and kind of having a coffee and talking about these things is kind of the feeling you kind of want to give in this portion, which hopefully will be translated. If not, that's okay. And if not, this will make a great podcast. So, I'm sure there will be some nice added visuals. So mine and my guests. Hello, Paule.
Hello, hello.
Dreary face isn't the only thing you see. But yes, today I will be interviewing or listening to Paule. Look at him.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
It's me. Since it's the 10-year anniversary of Death Films coming up this
Nothing more than
summer,
to give our own celebratory hand to ourselves, as if we've earned it.
I guess.
And what better thing to start it with than this movie?
Yeah, the Red Trees, or the Röda Träden as it's called in Swedish.
That's right.
Yeah, this was an exam project that was made for the film school both me and David went to, called Stitterska.
Yes, Stitterska, yes we did. 3 years of studying regular subjects, whilst as well doing film on the side. Yes, as integral as the rest of it, because it is a film school after all. And in your third final year, you write the script, and you send it in to the teachers. The teachers and the students vote, and they select few are, selected to be made. And then you divide the students into groups to make certain films that were chosen. Hopefully you want yours to win, or, maybe you don't, but then luckily yours was one of the ones that was picked, because it both needed and deserved to be made.
We're filming this video right now on the 14th of April. We started production exactly 3 years ago today. So I thought it was a good way to start, or a good idea to start this whole retrospective series talking about this movie, since it just coincided with the anniversary, or hit the mark of that 3-year anniversary of us starting to work on it. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The most important thing to say is how'd you come up with the idea? How did that happen? How did Red Trees become?
Well, I was just looking around to think about something that I've been wanting to make for a long time, and that ended up being John Truth. But since I wasn't so sure if it was too out there, too much of a risk to make that movie as an exam project, because it was surreal and a little odd and different and dreamlike, so I thought maybe the teachers or my class won't like to make a movie like this because it's just too weird. Mm-hmm. So I decided I'll make that before on my own with our Death Films crew, which we did, and that meant I had no idea left over for an exam movie. I remember I was actually walking with my godmother one day in the park, and then we just saw a red tree. Hey, Red Trees, that's a good title, you should use it one day. And then she said it could be a movie about maybe a gangster who's a taxi driver or something in that style, who's a very fancy taxi driver man. So that stuck with me, like maybe we could make a movie around that. During the first half of third year, you write a script. So the script teacher had given us a deadline. You're supposed to have written the script on, I think it was December. First week of December, you gotta be finished with it. And I forgot which day it was. So I arrived in the morning, and then Liz told me that today's the deadline of the scripts. So I had to write something that very morning, because I thought we gotta hand these scripts in before half of the day. So I sat next to a classmate called Gabriel, and then I wrote this thing in 20 minutes. 18 pages or something, and then I just called it Mr. Violate or the Red Trees, which became the final title.
Wow, very nice. A stressed working environment of a few minutes.
Yes.
Was it the same story that we ended up seeing, or was it different?
It had the same character, and it had the same scenario. It was a taxi driver who happens to be an assassin who kills the person who you think is the main character. The script actually started out with a man running next to a bus station because he feels he's being followed, or he's paranoid. You don't know if he's actually being followed, but he believes he is because he's carrying important information in a briefcase. And then all of a sudden a taxi shows up, and he's like, "Okay, I'll tag along with you." And then the taxi driver poisons him. But then the rest of the story is based on the taxi driver.
Mm-hmm.
What his life was like outside of his work. This whole story, my idea was I'll write a very lightweight thriller that has humorous elements in it. It wasn't too serious. So it's kind of funny, but also dramatic when it needed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And all this I wrote in 20 minutes on the spot because, the talk is taking, they need the scripts before midday. When I was done with the script, I just handed over the computer to a classmate of mine called Gabriel sitting next to me, and he read it. I was like, okay, I gotta see if this works. He turned to me and said, yeah, that's good. You got something good here. It's like, I just wrote it right now.
How confident were you with it, handing it in?
Well, I was decently confident. I mean, the lightweight situation was good enough. I didn't, like it said, I didn't take it too seriously. You gotta remember that in this school, most people write scripts that are very dramatic or based on very heavy source material. So I wanted to have something different written for them.
Mm-hmm. So when did you find out it was selected? How was it? Where were you?
On the premiere of John Truth.
Oh.
Yeah. What was it? I think they sent an email and the teachers selected the script. And what the funny thing is that the title was Misty by the Lid or The Red Trees, sort of harking back to Dr. Strangelove or Birdman. They decided that this is called Red Trees. I guess they thought they had to choose between Misty by the Lid or Red Trees as a title. But I meant it as the whole title.
Mm-hmm.
Thing that I've been looking forward to was working in a group, a team.
Of course.
Having a producer, having a cinematographer, having a scenographer or an editor. Everyone doing their thing, everyone actually going out and working on their separate.
Right.
So
I mean, this isn't something unusual. We do training of this in the other 2 years, so this was just another time, except for maybe a bit of a higher stake at this point.
Yeah. Everyone got their chance to do something. Everyone got the chance to hold the camera or produce or even act, I guess.
Yeah.
That happened too.
So, who was part of this whole team? Who were the people that helped this movie get made? You and as director, I presume. It says so on the poster, but it also says something else there. So I'm curious to see how all of that happened and who else helped with this.
I got Adam as a cinematographer, and I was super happy about that because he knew how to handle a camera in a fantastic way. I learned a lot working with him on Svenska Drömmen. And even his documentary that he made with Gabriel and Andreas, and all those music videos, it was stunning work. He had an eye for visual aestheticness. Mm-hmm. We had Pandau as our producer, and then we had Felisa as our scenographer, and then that was it.
That was it.
We were the smallest group, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the smallest one, really.
Yeah.
How come?
I don't know.
How many other members did the other teams have?
They had a few, at least 2 more members.
2 more, so they feels like interesting.
Yeah, and since this was selected, I told my group that let's go with something that's timeless. Let's make sure this movie doesn't feel too modern or too old. That it will work in the future, will work in the past. Anyone should be able to see it and not think of anything that's relevant at the time when it was made. Just make a simple, unique story. What's the most unique story we could make? Or unique movie we could make? Let's just make it feel like its own thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yeah.
So then everything started to slowly come together?
Yeah. We looked at some locations because we're still following the original script. Nothing was changed yet. But then things changed. Our producer left us. And our scenographer. Both disappeared. They had other things to deal with, personal matters.
All right.
And Adam and I were left alone. So Adam suggested to me, hey, I really like this story. would you mind if we co-directed this thing? Think about it. And I gave it thought. I thought about it for about a week, and then I said to him, yes, we'll do that, because I don't want to lose anyone else, and I want you to be as committed as I am. And you have good ideas, and you seem to be on the same page as I am. So therefore, we decided to co-direct and also co-produce and co-everything, basically. So I think he really liked the tone of the beginning of the movie. Since the original script starts with this man being paranoid, walking from the bus station and then being picked up by the taxi, he thought this tone is really good. It's mysterious. It adds a layer of intensity in the air, tension. So his idea was, I think the movie is good, or the script is good, but it may be a little too much for us. It may be a little too complicated, because it goes from taxi scene to getting a mission from an evil gangster man, to apartment scene, to restaurant scene, to driving in the highway scene, and then mansion scene. So it's quite a lot of locations and characters for just two people to figure out. So his idea or suggestion to me was, why don't you take the beginning, these first 3 pages of the script, stretch them out to 15 minutes, and then if this movie works well, we can make the rest of the movie later as even a feature movie. And after a while I said, you know what, that's not a bad idea. I actually kind of like that. Just focus on this setting, the conversation the taxi driver can have with the man with the briefcase, and then having the turning point happen at the end of the movie.
The script writing, now that it was supposed to be different, right? These 3 pages or whatever were not supposed to be the entire thing. How do you go from stretching this out? How do you do that?
Well, that was a challenge, because I didn't have the dialogue. I didn't have a character for the person who was the main character from the beginning. He was just supposed to be like your everyday typical leading man. A man with like a top hat, a nice suit. He looked like a character straight from a neo-noir movie, or a classic noir movie from the 50s or 60s. So he was not supposed to have a personality. He was just supposed to be the embodiment of that. Like, it's like a cardboard cutout of what that is, and to trick the audience that this is the main character. But whoa, after the first scene, he dies and he's not the main character. This guy is. Oh, you don't see that.
No.
Yeah, so we had to come up with his story. We had to come up with his name. We had to come up with why he actually had the briefcase with him, where he had been, and why he's doing this. So together, me and Adam came up with his name and his backstory is based on different things that we wanted to explore. And we gave him a very long backstory. Like, we wrote out, like, I think about 5 pages on Google Docs about his life. His color theme would be blue because of the connection with the ocean, because he was a swimmer. His grandfather was a fisherman. So therefore, he had a blue suit on, and he was on his way to Neptune streets. Neptune is Gotham. And Valladolid would be red because of the wine and the violence and the blood. So red and blue. Those were the 2 color themes for both characters. And then non-religious and religious clashing in this car. What would they talk about? Okay, it's supposed to go from something very casual, like what's your family like, to something more deep, about meaning of life, almost touching upon ish. Like what does Valladolid believe? What does Alexander believe? They have to find something that both like, a common ground, and that was sport, football.
Ah, a classic, a gentleman's.
Yes, so they were supposed to listen to a football game, and then they begin singing. But then a turning point happens, which is that Valladolid gets angry that their favorite team loses. And from there on, things don't become so happy again. So it's like life. We go up and down a little bit.
All right.
It can't be straight up darkness or straight up haha. It's supposed to be a bit of both. Mix it all up. Make it seem realistic. Like if this actually is happening at night.
Right.
So that was a big challenge, just finding the right things to say. And I think both me and Adam took a lot of inspiration from classics. I was very influenced by Italian films like The Conformist or La Strada or even Novecento. Movies that were very unfiltered in a way. They made the small moments in life super interesting because every character would put so much passion into what they're doing outside of the main plot of the story that becomes even more entertaining to watch because you can actually see how much they're living this life and enjoying themselves. Like making food or just singing a song or casually talking about something else that doesn't matter. Tarantino has found that that's something that he likes to do. I'm just putting in my opinion on hamburgers in this one scene while they're on their way to, I don't know, some kind of mob job. So we had to find our own conversation, our own topics to talk about. I think the biggest challenge was writing the monologue for Valladolid because he was supposed to tell a very haunting story to Alexander, which is the point where Alexander realizes that he's not in a car with a nice man, he's in a car with a murderer. Adam wanted to write that on his typewriter because he found a very old typewriter.
Oh.
So we spent about a few weeks on that, just like different days. I have to go to his house because he felt the inspiration tingling when he was next to that typewriter. Basically. Mm-hmm. And then when we had the script, that's when we started casting.
Ah.
Yes.
Production is an interesting step because there's a lot there that you need to think of, and especially now you being, well, a production producer down. How was that? What were the things you needed to get done, and how did you do them?
Because since Adam was the cinematographer from the beginning, he would of course continue being the cinematographer. We had no sound person, so I had to do it. And I was afraid of that because I hadn't really taken the sound before. Just a little bit on occasion, something we did at school, but I hadn't really focused on that. And Adam was also thinking about having a lot of camera movements in the car. Or should we put up a rig in the car? But that would almost mean having a car in a studio. And we couldn't do that because we couldn't afford to film this in a studio environment because we got 2,000 crowns from the school and that's it. The rest of the money comes from us.
And how much did you and Adam put in, if you did at all?
Me and Adam started asking the family, like his family, I asked my family, of if some people could volunteer with some sponsoring, and we ended up getting about 14,000 in total. And most of that money eventually went to traveling and renting the equipment because we didn't really have a good camera to use. The school cameras weren't really adaptable for what we wanted. Mm-hmm. We need to be in a car that's moving, right, and to get shots that aren't too shaky because he's going to be sitting there with a camera and it's going to be shaking. So we found a gimbal, a stabilizer on the internet, and we knew we needed to rent this thing, and we also needed to rent a camera that was nice and looked good. So we found a Sony A7S II. Unbelievable because you can film in very, very low lights. Like you could be in a dark room and then just light a candle and this will illuminate the room. If you actually set the camera up right, you have to know your settings in the best way. But I saw some footage from some guy walking on a beach in the middle of the night. At first he tricks you because he shows you the footage that he's tampered with, making it seem like it's daylight. But then it says, this is how it actually looked, and it's middle of the night. And that was pretty unbelievable because we wanted to film at night.
Mm-hmm, of course.
And this car is small. You can put up so many lights in this thing. You can't really do that unless you tape something up, which we did. We taped a little bit of some lights in some corners, but the rest had to be natural light. And Adam also found out that his stepfather in this antique store in Gotland had a nice old car, Rover, and an old taxi sign that we could actually put up on the top. Make it seem like an old taxi. Since this movie was supposed to be timeless either way, might as well go with something that just looks super classic. Mm-hmm. Because people like vintage cars nowadays, so they can drive around with them no matter what time it is. I hope. It was about 15 pages, 13 pages, if I remember correctly. This would mean about a 15 minutes short, we thought. And one important element that we could not get rid of was getting rid of the loneliness of Vadalid, showing who he is outside of his work.
Mm-hmm.
So the movie could not end with him killing Alexander, because that would go against the point of the original version of the story, which always was to follow this driver, the villain, the bad guy, you think. Who is he really? So one scene had to stay at the end. And it was supposed to be him going home. He lives by himself. He has the wine bottle waiting for him. A note saying, "Thank you for your work," signed Mr. Cloud. And then he opens up the wine bottle, takes the cork, throws it up on a little box filled with a bunch of corks because he's done so many assassination jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone knocks on his door. He goes eagerly to open the door, and it's just someone who knocked on the wrong door.
Oh.
So he's got no one. He's got no one who cares
No
for
one
him.
meant to see him.
No. But then to add the element of religion, it ended up being set at a church instead.
Mm-hmm.
Him going to church. We're asking God if he can forgive him. And we leave the audience there. You know, do you forgive him or do you not forgive him? Will God forgive him? Who knows? So it's up to the audience to talk and discuss. So that always had to stay. That always had to stay because that was the point. That was the concept. So luckily we managed to get that in there. And since Vadalid takes a lot of inspiration from a person that I know called Paco, who's been in our Clank movies, played Silvio in the beginning. He actually is from Vadalid. He is a taxi driver. He works for the Spanish embassy. Although, of course, he's not an assassin. You know, that's fantasy. That's fantasy. That's for the movie. But I took inspiration from his persona, his personality, which is very much a nice, happy man who likes to share stories and talks to you about everything. And he likes football.
Yeah.
Soccer, you know.
Very Spanish.
So that's very Spanish, right? And then he likes wine.
Understandably.
So therefore, Vadalid, that's what it was. So I wanted to get a Spanish actor for this part to honor him too, because he's supposed to be Spanish. We have to get someone who's Spanish. And then that turned out to be complicated because there aren't many Spanish-speaking actors that you can think of in Sweden. The most famous person being Matias Varela, who was in Snabba Cash. He was unavailable because he was filming Assassin's Creed at the time. So therefore out of our reach. But we needed someone who could speak Spanish, and then eventually, if you can't find someone, you can't find someone. So you're gonna have to just tell the actor, whoever it is, that okay, do your best with a Spanish accent, if you can. No worries, we need someone, because that's how far it went.
How did you go about finding the right actors?
We tried casting from satis.se. That didn't work out because, as you know, those people are used to being extras. They aren't used to being big players in larger productions or smaller productions. They've done it, but it's not their area of expertise. It's not their true craft. They're supposed to show up and be extras. A lot of people do the casting via satis.se because it's easy, because you can find people who want to be in movies for free. So we did it just to see what we could find, and it just didn't work out because we were in the studio at the school and set up 2 chairs in front of each other and a mirror in front of the front chair. So that mirror was supposed to be the mirror in the car.
Mm-hmm.
So the person playing the driver could look at the actor in the back.
Mm-hmm.
Because they were supposed to lock eye contact a few times in the movie, and we try to make them feel like they were immersed in this environment of the car at night as best we could, and try to be as calm and as inviting and just as at ease as we could be. But these people just felt too much tension and became too stale because of, I don't know, maybe expectations that we were judging them, which we weren't. We were trying to be nice and friendly and explaining the movie, why we're doing it. So that was the moment when I told Adam that we're gonna have to think differently. Since Stilichka has been around since 2009, the first people who graduated from the school was in 2012. They made a movie called The Collector, which starred Sven Wollter, an established actor in Sweden, by asking him, and they sent him the script, and he just decided to be in it because he liked the script. What do you think nobody else has tried that? Is it because it's too much pressure, or are people just a little scared of doing that? Which, the thought of it, thinking about asking someone more established, I mean, you obviously you'll be a little nervous because these people have been working so much and you're just a student, or you're just making movies independently. You're not on that level yet. But he said, you know what, we should do it because I don't think this is working out. So let's look around for people. When it came to the role of Alexander, there were only 2 candidates. The first being the actor who played Alexander in Fanny and Alexander. Since Adam likes Bergman, I haven't seen the movie, but I imagine it's good. So he said, this guy hasn't acted in a long time, maybe we could ask him. So it was an option, but then he thought about something better. At the same antique store in Gotland where his stepfather works, Magnus Krepper had passed by on occasion, maybe a couple times. The stepfather got his phone number. So Adam said, hey, can I get the phone number and call him and see if he wants to read our script? And he did. And we were having lunch at the time. And this was even before our producer left us. So we were eating steaks in a steakhouse, and then Adam calls him. And I remember how Adam was so secure and talked to him like a best friend. So that was pretty impressive. How he had no hesitation, no nervousness shown at all. Just talked to Magnus like, hey, my buddy, how you doing? Hey, I got the script going. We're gonna make a movie for our school. You wanna read it? I said, yeah, I'll have to read your script, see if I like it. He read it, and then he called back the same day and said, yeah, I'll do this. I'll do your movie. Since we already knew we wanted to film at Gotland because of the car, we told him that it's fine. You have your house at Gotland, so you can stay there while we're filming. But whoever else we get, we have to actually get them over there. Somehow, I guess we'll pay the tickets. He was on board. Magnus was on board. Magnus was confirmed. That was, at the moment, it felt like, is this real? Is this happening? Are we getting Magnus, this actor, to be in this movie? So it was just kind of like an idea, a thought in your mind that this would actually be real. He gave us his word, but if his schedule wouldn't work out for us, we would not have Magnus in the movie. Mm-hmm. So that was a risk. We were not ready to lose the first actor we got, because we got Magnus, which means we'll use this to our advantage and get our people on board to show that we're as serious as we possibly can be, even though we're just 2 people trying to make this movie. But we really believe in it, and we want to show what we can do. And therefore it also means having actors who are serious and know their craft and can offer their own perspective and their own experience, because we haven't been working so long as they have. So we can learn from them, and they can offer whatever they want to offer when it comes to insight on acting and making movies in general, because they know it. They know the industry by heart, right? And when we couldn't find an actor for Via the Lid, Magnus gave us some suggestions. We called a few of those friends, and some were interested and happy to hear that Magnus had liked the script and wanted to be in it. But they were busy. A lot of people are busy because spring and I guess late winter to early spring and early summer is the busiest season when it comes to filming and TV production, or any production in Sweden in general. So a lot of people are booked and ready to work on something else. So we got some guy on board, and then the very next day he couldn't anymore. So that kept happening for a few times. Like, okay, we got that guy on board. Next day, he can't anymore. So okay, back to the drawing table. Mm-hmm. Like, we had most things ready, but we couldn't really move forward unless we had someone on board. So we just kept on pushing the start date of filming every time, without even knowing when it's actually going to happen, because they give you about 3-4 months to find your production weeks at school. Like, you need 2 weeks minimum. But in this case, we couldn't even tell the teachers when we're going to start filming. All they knew is that, oh, Adam and Polly, they're gonna make a movie on their own, and they have Magnus Krepper apparently filming with them. They don't have the equipment yet. They're gonna produce on their own. Go away to Gotland? Really? Are you gonna do that? We have to, because that's where the car is. That's where we have our locations. We needed a church for the end of the movie. A church in Gotland gave us permission to film there. And Adam found a great restaurant as well that looked fantastic for the movie. So might as well use them if we're gonna film in Gotland. If we actually get permission from these people, we gotta make sure it works. I called Paco, the inspiration for By the Lid, even asked him if he was, even in some capacity, remotely interested in being in this movie. And he said, well, it's too much for me, but you remember Juan Rodriguez? A Spanish actor. So I called him up, talked to him. He was very kind and very funny. The right age for the role too, because he needed to be mature. But he couldn't because of two reasons. He had a theater play coming up, and he didn't have a driver's license. So how are we gonna fake this? But then he said, you know what, call my friend, Roberto. He's also from Spain, and he's a very, very good friend of mine, an actor and a musician. Talk to him. So we did. We had meetings with both actors, both Magnus and Roberto, on two separate occasions. We met Magnus at school, and we met Roberto at Kulturhuset. And Magnus was very much straight to the point. What's my character? What's the scene? What's the story? What happens in this scene? What's the turning point? Oh, interesting. So he was very much eager to find out what's going to happen in the movie. And he showed up. It was late afternoon. All the teachers had left by that point because it was very late. Adam was already very secure and very much acting like a friend next to him. We went through the entire script. At the beginning, I did feel very nervous because I knew his work. I knew that Magnus had won a lot of awards. He was a very versatile actor. This is a person of that caliber. So I did excuse myself out of the room for like a moment, for like at least like 2 minutes, because I told them I'm gonna close the lights over there because to save energy. So I just walked out there and just, okay, we're just gonna talk. Went back in and then it worked well. That was an important takeaway, I think, just to realize that all these people are just like anyone. We're just gonna talk. But with Roberto, it was the opposite. He was asking us, "Oh, who are you two? Who are you guys? Why do you want to make a movie? Where are you from? What do you study? What's up, you know?" And then what's the story? The other exam movie started production, and they want us to help them. They want us to also show up and be on set, which is fine. We can, but it was just difficult because we had to figure out our movie first. So it was just a lot of multitasking, and days went by when we had to be on their sets instead of figuring out our own, and we got back home and we got no progress made, unfortunately. And I was gonna show up in Gable's movie, Riftwood, as a ghost, a spirit, because Gable really wanted me to play the part because, you have to be the part because you're tall and like you look like a ghost, I guess. We made the mistake of watching Barry Lyndon the day before or night before, and 3-hour movie, and you start watching it, you can't stop. We show up, it's like 6 in the morning, and then Gabriel tells us we can't film the scene because something happened with their schedule and it's not dark enough outside. And Adam's like, no, film it now, look, there's fog outside, go out and film it, it's gonna look good, you change the scene. And we spend a few hours with them, but then we tell them we have to go. We have to get a move on our own project. Good luck. We're sorry, but we gotta get a move on. So we walked to a bus station that's close by because they were filming like an hour outside of the city in the forest, in the woods. So while we're walking in the woods, I remember telling Adam that we could make an entire book about just the production so far about this movie because so much has been happening up and down. What do we do? I just called Roberto because he was the best actor we could find for Berlin and told him I gave him a false start date. I told him we're just gonna start filming this weekend. There you go, we're gonna start filming those days. And he said, okay, good, I'm booked now. Fantastic. Problem was, we didn't know if Magnus could film those dates. I had to tell him something so he'd be on board that we actually had an actor for the part, but we didn't know if it was going to work with Magnus. And then Magnus just calls the next day and says, I just found out my schedule for the next upcoming weeks, and this is the only weekend I can. And it happened to be the same fall start date I gave to Roberto. So that's how we got both of them to be in the movie. That out of some coincidence, both people could the same weekend, but I had to tell one person in advance because, they're booking in their days according to what happens, and you gotta be early.
Of course.
So that was a close one.
Wow, what misadventures.
Yeah, and something else actually happened before we got Roberto on board. There's a movie called Utvandrarna and Invandrarna, 2 movies, and there's a character, I don't know the name of the character, but an actor called Eddie Axberg, who's been in movies with Jan Troell, famous Swedish director. Adam suggested him because he was the right age, and although he wasn't Spanish, he was a good actor. So I found his number, called him, and he said, "Oh well, I all this sounds interesting. Filming with Magnus and Gotland, you can try to sell me all you want, but I've hung up my shoes on the shelf. Like, I'm done with acting." I was like, "Are you sure? This movie is about this and that, and you're the main character, and you're gonna be in the scene in the car with him, and we'll pay everything else. We'll pay the tickets. We'll pay the food. Don't worry." And he's like, "No. The only way you can get me on board is if you can get Jan Troell, the director that he worked with, to call him up and tell him to do it."
Did you try?
Yeah, because I went to Adam and I said, "This is the only way." And Adam just started, "You know what? My grandmother had a dinner with someone who knew Jan Troell." I turned to him and said, "So you mean this could happen?" "Oh yeah, this is happening." So he started calling his grandmother, and the grandmother called a friend, and then within a week's time, we had Jan Troell's personal phone number. And this man's 80 something years old. And he is very much living, a quiet life now and not really being very active in the business. Adam is on the phone, and his wife answers, and then he explains the situation, and then he does talk to Jan Troell. And that was something. If someone knows how to write a script, it's him. And he tells us, "Well, of course, I have to read the script before I talk to Eddie about this." We send him the script, and that's like the ultimate test to see if this is good. If he likes it, then
you know.
Then I know. But if he doesn't, like, what is he gonna say? What's happening? And then he did call Adam the next day, and said, "I've been talking to Eddie, but whatever I say, I just can't convince him. He won't do it. He won't do your movie." Turns out that he actually did like it, and he called him. But even though he tried to tell him to do the movie with us, Eddie didn't, because I guess for him this was an impossible task.
He never believed it'd go that far, and yet he went beyond and above.
Yeah.
And
yeah. And he told us that this reminded him of Krzysztof Kieslowski, like the Blue movie especially. And we hadn't heard about these movies before, so we told our teachers the story, and both used, "Blue movie, Kieslowski?" Started laughing. That was like the biggest compliment we could ever get. We watched them and like, yeah, sure, I see what this is coming from. It's not exactly the same story, but just tonally they have something similar going on. So therefore we knew that this was in the right path, and it was just a very surreal moment to have that man read the script and approve of it. That was just one of the many stories that happened throughout the pre-production that was just kind of like, what? This is happening? You have to like do this? Magnus showing up, you gotta do this, and like Jan Troell calls and you gotta do this. Seemed like everything was possible. Seemed like you could go the distance with this movie, like, come far with it. And even like Adam had the idea of even sending this to the Oscars. Like, we're gonna go for the Oscar for best short film, and we're gonna show this movie to everyone, and it's gonna be the bomb, it's gonna blow everyone's minds. And that motivation, of course, spreads to me, because he believed so strongly that this could be a thing that, of course, I would believe it too. Like, really? We're gonna go for this? Yes. We're gonna go for this. We're combining things from your family, things from your life, and I'm combining things from my life, and the passion I have for this, and the ocean, and my country, and it's true. I mean, we combined a lot of things: Swedish culture, Spanish culture, and obviously it felt like we were doing something great. That was the story of pre-production. It was all over the place, and then eventually we found 2 actors. We found the car, we found the dates. Now we just needed to go and get the equipment. It would cost us about a few thousand crowns to rent the equipment for a week's time. The problem was that the place we wanted to rent this from closed down. Filmcentrum in Stockholm closed down. And no other place 3 years ago had gimbals that we could rent, or the camera that we wanted. So we had to get this from Malmö. So we're living in Stockholm, and Malmö is all the way in Skåne, south of Sweden. We had no other option, no other choice. We did lie about something. We lied about something, and
If I had to guess, it'd be where the movie takes place.
yes, they support movies made in the south of Sweden, so we told them that the movie takes place in Skåne. So that was sort of our way out of the issue there, to convince them. We had to, because we had no other choice. We paid them the money. We bought our tickets for the boat, for the airplane, back and forth, because we couldn't waste any time.
No.
I think we scheduled about 5 days of filming in Gotland, and then the last day in Stockholm, because we found a location that was pretty nice for the bus station at the beginning of the movie. I was really tired. We both were, but we had to, go to Malmö and pick the equipment up. Spending the entire day there, you go into the stores, walking, to every store, getting the gimbal, getting the lenses, getting the camera, and then flying back. And we actually shot the first image, the first, not scene, but the first few images for the movie that day, the 14th, 3 years ago now. Which was the eye. The eye that you see in the beginning of the movie.
That's right, which if I'm not mistaken, that eye in the beginning of the movie.
Yeah. It was supposed to be Emilio's eye, because we had promised Emilio a little mini extra part in the movie, because the eye represents the first person that Violet killed, which is his monologue, his story that tells Alexander in the car. He saw how the eyes went red, and then the veins formed these trees, these red trees, and then he died, or so we thought. So we're gonna show Emilio's eye, and then just do our best to focus on the veins, enhance them maybe in post-production if possible. But since these lenses that Adam wanted to use were too expensive for us, we couldn't bring them with us. We thought, well, I guess my eye looks close enough to Emilio's. Why not actually film it now? Let's do it. And I was really tired, so I did have a lot of red veins in my eye. And then they actually just let us use some of the lenses to test them out. So we were in some room where I guess the people who worked there were eating lunch. But I wanted mine to be even more red, so I did go to the bathroom and took some soap and put it in the eye. And maybe it wasn't the best thing to do, but I wanted to make sure it was red enough. So I just walked back and I put soap in my eye. Film it now. Yeah, it's like okay, lay down on the table and do this. And okay, I'm gonna film your eye as close as I can. Just don't move it. Okay. So I was just focusing on something in the ceiling, and then people walk past hey, yeah, just testing the lenses. Yeah, that's nice. Good lenses, right? I'm yeah, okay, film my eye.
Enough talk.
And it's kind of scary. I remember looking at the footage oof.
Oh no, what did
that's
I do?
Scary. What did I do? But
you got the shot.
We got the shot, and then we traveled back, and then the next day picked up Roberto. Our dad drove us to the port, the harbor, went up on the boat to Gotland, and Emilio came with us as a production assistant and also to be the extra, help us out because we needed some people to be assistants. And then we also got Elisa on board, and she was in the same class as Emilio, and she had been very nice and helped on a bunch of different things we've done in the past, like Clank Legacy that we filmed earlier during the same year. Unfortunately, you couldn't be there, David.
No, I was not, which is...
Because we bought the tickets for the actors,
of course.
back and forth, and since Elisa did volunteer with her own money and paid her own ticket, she was that willing and kind enough to do so. And then Emilio didn't have to spend his own money because Dad bought mine and his tickets, and since we're family, you know, he bought tickets for us. And if you would have joined, you would have to spend your own money on it, I think, because, you know, I don't think Dad would have bought your ticket. I'm not sure, you know.
No worries, I'm here interviewing, so it all worked out.
Otherwise, if we didn't film in Gotland, David would have been in the movie. David would have been in the scene, in the restaurant scene. You would have been one of the extras.
Ah.
Yes. So don't feel left out because I had no choice on that matter.
Do not worry.
So I'm sorry, David. You couldn't be in the movie.
I'm alright.
Oh, maybe he should have been Valladolid.
Ah.
Right?
I don't know. I don't think I'm old enough.
You could do it.
Anyway, so getting to the meat of the stuff then. Filming, simply put. How was it? How was the whole thing, making it, from beginning to end?
It was tricky. It was tricky because a lot of things were riding on this thing. I felt pressure. I felt scared because now we're actually here. Now we gotta do this. You know, we can't waste time. No sitting around watching movies or talking about what we want to make, but actually make it. So our last script reading was in the evening that very day, on the 15th of April, sitting in that car, and that was the first time we saw our two actors perform lines from our movie.
Mm-hmm.
Because each time we had meetings with them, they never read the lines. They just talked to us about the movie, and we didn't need to hear them read them because we trusted them so well. So that's when we actually saw this thing come together, saw the little lines take shape and actually be giving life, and that was a nice moment. It took some extra time until we actually filmed. We spent a little too much time like preparing, or I guess we lingered on the preparation time, and then we forgot something in the house. We had to go back and get the thing from the house, run back. I don't know, something just wasn't ready each time. It took just longer and longer. We said, okay, we're gonna start filming at 8 o'clock. That's when we start filming. And then in reality was that we started filming at 10 o'clock. We kept pushing the time of when we started filming because it was just too much for two heads, too much for both of us. We didn't keep our promise because it's on their own time and we have to get these scenes done that day, because if we don't, we got no other day to film that. We gotta film the beginning part of the taxi bit up until this page first night, and then the next part the next day. That was it. And you can't get too late because next day we gotta film again. We can't stay up all night.
So how many days was it?
4 days in Gotland and 5 days counting the last day in Stockholm.
Filming?
Filming, yes.
What were you filming in Stockholm?
Filming the opening scene at the bus station.
I see.
We're gonna get a bus for that actually. I'll get to it soon.
Impressive.
Yeah. But Elisa's uncle, bus driver, agreed to be in the movie. The first day worked well. It's the start of everything. A little slow in the beginning. It's also a little scary.
I would be surprised if you, Adam, and everyone else didn't just mesh together in a camaraderie of the project.
Yeah, because we lived in the same house, except Magnus, because he went to his house. But Roberto was in the same house as we, and he played guitar music during the day. And I remember I was testing the microphone. He was reading his lines. I was listening. Adam was thinking about something for the cinematography, for the shot, for the camera work. The second day was probably the worst day, because the camera didn't work the way we wanted to. The gimbal stopped working. The battery was out. It didn't charge well. Both Magnus and Roberto were looking at us like, what's gonna happen? have you figured this thing out yet? What are you gonna do? And the antique store was our base, and then we drove into the woods, so we couldn't really go back anymore. So Adam had to film most of the monologue and dialogue scenes handheld. There was no other choice. And Roberto and Magnus were both looking at us. They weren't angry, they weren't judgmental, but they were understanding of what happened, but they gave us advice to, you know, always be ready, you know. If this happens in a bigger production you work on, you know, always have some plan B, plan C even. Right now we understand, but, you know, think about these things beforehand. Have a list. Have a list of things you need to have ready for tomorrow. And write it the day before or during the day, and then have check marks so you have everything there. So you don't have to go back to the house back and forth because you missed the little screw thing that you need on the gimbal. If you've seen the movie, I'm sitting next to Magnus, but he's in the corner of the car holding the microphone like this. And then I had two microphones connected to the same Zoom, but the other one was taped up in a way where it's like sort of like pointed towards Roberto. It was very, very tight in that car. It was smaller than I thought it was. And then Adam in the front holding the gimbal like this and then moving back and forth and getting very long shots, very nice long shots. But it was a tight fit in that car. And then when he moved, when he switched angles, he sat next to Magnus. I had to be in the passenger seat next to Roberto, and I was still taking the sound, so I was like hiding almost underneath the seat, but looking towards Adam's direction, holding the microphone like this, like hiding there. And if you think about it, it's kind of dangerous because it's actually driving the car on the road, and I'm just hiding like this underneath the passenger seat, holding the microphone up, and then we cut, and then we tell them things like, okay, now is this part, Adam, because we're like moving back and forth with this part of the dialogue that we need, or this part of the dialogue that we need, or this scene. So Adam, we need a close-up of Magnus when he smokes, or we need the second part of the monologue from this scene. Like, okay, good. So the conversation back and forth between us. So that was the second night. And that night took longer because of the little misstep with the gimbal. And that meant less sleep for both of us. And we did go through the footage just to see how it looked, just to feel safe and secure. But I remember, I think I got about less than 5 hours of sleep. Adam got even almost 4 hours of sleep, or less than that. I don't know how he was able to operate, but he did it. Maybe on pure energy of wanting to make the movie. Who knows? And that was the morning we had to go to the restaurant, because this restaurant is also a hotel. So they have guests coming up at a certain time, and that's when we couldn't film. So we had to film before. So that was a challenge, just staying up, just walking around the place, just feeling the tiredness taking over you, and you're almost like, okay, I'm gonna fall asleep or something. What's gonna happen?
Coffee?
I didn't drink coffee.
Fatal mistake.
No, I didn't really drink coffee.
Could have helped.
I've done it later on other productions, but I didn't do it on this movie at all. But then somehow I just snapped out of it, like okay, movie, it's happening. And that's when we filmed Emilio's cameo, and Elisa had a cameo too as the bartender. The shot that we used in the final movie didn't show her face, but it showed her hands though. And it was a very nice place. Like, we could even switch the lights in the background because there were like fake windows on the walls with paintings. And then there was like a switch on the wall, and you could like move it up and it would go blue, or you could move it down, it went red, or in the middle it went light blue. So I remember I was switching that manually when Violet took his seat at his table, where the wine was waiting for him. Some details were taken out of the movie, some details of context of why he's actually there to assassinate Alexander. Since Alexander is there because he's taking information from the Information Bureau, which were a real thing in the 70s. And the Information Bureau, they were exposed. And that's, I guess, the biggest influence from Adam's and Andreas' script, One Blind Eye. That whole story of why he was on a mission or on a job, a dangerous job, having the information with him. Cloud was a man who wanted to make sure that the information didn't get out, and Violet was sent out to find him. They do talk about that in the original script, in the footage that we filmed. There is mention of it. There's also mention of why Violet left Spain. He left Spain because of the civil war. El Caudillo came and made sure that I had to leave my country. So things like that were taken out because we had to, shorten up the movie or fasten the pace, pretty much. Historical tidbits, because they actually listened to a radio interview with one of the writers who exposed the Information Bureau. We had the entire interview play out in the car. I actually had an MP3 player with me, and then I played some songs, and the interview that was supposed to be the radio, so they could actually listen to it when they were in the car and acting. But that whole section was taken out because ultimately we needed to just focus on the pace, and historical aspects, while interesting, weren't 100% needed. It does leave things up to speculation a bit more without them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
We continued that very same night because every night we had to film something. Car scenes. That day, or that night, we shot the part when Magnus first sees the taxi, this scene on the poster, goes into the car and drives away. And after that we had a break, went back to the antique store, our base, and we had a man show up who was a makeup artist who Adam had gotten in contact with. So he showed up and spent about an hour applying the wounds and the blood on Magnus's face in the antique store. In the meantime, we were just like walking around, making jokes, talking, socializing with Roberto. It was all good times. I remember specifically how Magnus was walking in the antique store, looking at everything, like looking at the plates and the little old comics or diverse objects in the store, being fascinated by everything. And he was telling me, I'd like to like buy this, but I feel like I have to buy it even more, Like he wanted to buy so much of this stuff, but I guess even he didn't know why he wanted to buy it. He just liked this stuff. Like he just wanted to buy it. Old stuff. So it's a memory I had from that evening. We were rehearsing the scene where he beats him up. And here's where Emilio's area of expertise of gun tactics and action scenes and stunts came into play. As I asked him, how would he fire this gun if they're sitting next to each other and it's gonna shoot him in the head? And this idea of him actually firing him in the head came from the fact that it needed to have a big impact for the audience, that the fact that this character died, so it couldn't just be the poison. It wouldn't be impactful enough. It needed to be strong. It needed to be... You feel the silence of him having left our movie. So that's why it became a gun in the end. Emilio pretending to be Alexander and Roberto sitting next to him, and he was showing him, so Magnus would go and get the gun, hold it like this, and then you should grab his hand like this, bring him down, and then hit him with the gun a few times, and then bring him up, and then put your arm up like this, and then fire, So that was all worked together with Emilio while they were applying the makeup.
Mm-hmm.
And then Adam showed up and sat next to me, like, okay, how about this and that, and like we were all like working on it. It was pretty fun times actually. And then we went back to the same location, and shot the bit when he tries to get the gun from Roberto and gets smacked in the head and bang, dies. And that was a crazy little filming hour or two. Took a few hours, I guess. Just looking at the madness in Roberto's eyes when he was killing Magnus' character. You saw how this nice man turned into this demon in a way, like just how his eyes darkened up and became something else, like the violence took him over. And that was interesting. And then the makeup artist came with us to see what we were filming. He was like, oh, I can't believe you got such amazing actors to be in your movie. Are they doing, like, how much are you paying them? They're doing this for free.
How much are you bringing the makeup artist?
He got some money.
Nah.
He got some money, yes. We paid the food, we paid the tickets, we paid the everything else except the actors. They were there on their own time, and you know they thought that this was interesting because they saw it as a mentor-apprentice situation where they were there to see us learn from them and also learn from us, vice versa. I think they learned a lot from us as well because we learned a lot from them. We have everything prepared for tomorrow, the list, and make sure we're on time. If you say a time, you gotta stick to that time because a lot of people are counting on you. That was important, you know, like we learned it by having done the mistake. And you learn best by doing, you know, by actually being there. And the next day was the church scene. And that was powerful. At some point we wanted to have a big fancy church. But then we thought, no, he only has a little small church that's not as grand and epic in scale as others. The best he can get is that little church where the most essential thing exists, the cross of Jesus. We traveled all the way there. Roberto is actually driving the car because wherever we drove, wherever we went, Roberto was our driver in real life. In the church scene, we were planning on playing a classic song, the song that you actually hear in the movie in the beginning and ending. And our idea was to avoid copyright, to actually have someone play their own rendition of the song, since it's a classic music piece. So we actually got a hold of a person who plays piano organ music in churches. So a person showed up at the church and played the song. You know, the whole thing. Adam filmed the piano player's fingers as if someone would start playing the song in the movie. It wasn't just a score that we place over the movie, it's actually someone in the movie who starts playing it. Roberto's character walks up to the cross of Jesus and his hands show up and start performing the song. And then the end credits play. And then you see the hands and then the hands stop. And the movie ends. We filmed that. We recorded the entire song. I had my microphone with me and I recorded it. But since I wasn't so good with sound, which we'll get to later, we didn't end up using it. But we did have someone there playing the song on the piano, on the organ, which was nice. And I was even thinking, what if this was Death? Playing the song is waiting for him. It's soon time for you too, Violet. You know, come with me. And at some point, I just thought about what Roberto would see, what his character would see in front of him. And that was a moment that felt really powerful and otherworldly. Because you're in the church, this church is already so old. And then you imagine this spiritual ghost being in the same room in the movie. But you don't see it because we don't have the budget to create this sign for the movie. So, but with the music in mind, with the setting in mind, it's just like, you wish you could do that, but let's use what we have. Let's show the faces of all the icons on the walls, looking at Roberto's character, judging him, dang, 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 like cutting fast to them while he's yelling and destroying his cross, you know. That was the idea, like all the faces looking at him, as if they're alive, you know, the paintings are alive looking at him. Then he would turn around and he would see Death standing there, like a very tall version of Death, a skeleton with the hoodie on and maybe even wings, and then like a giant skeleton hand would like come on his shoulder and caress him and say, it's all gonna be fine. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid. And then they would walk away. And that was just the idea that I saw in my head on the set, but we didn't do that because we couldn't. But the biggest takeaway was Roberto's acting, Roberto's performance. He told us before we, rehearse, before we go with what you're gonna tell me for the scene, allow me to just test something to show you an idea. I said, sure. He walks in, performing the scene, and he starts lighting the candles, and he's speaking in Spanish. And I did not tell him to speak in Spanish. But since he knew his character so well at this point, because we had talked about his character so much, he knew that in church, in this part of the movie, he would speak to God and Jesus in his mother tongue. So he lights a candle for his father and his mother and for the poor soul that he killed, Alexander. He lights the candles, and then he walks halfway up to the cross, and he kneels, and he starts crying right there. And this is just a test take. This is just him. Let me just show you an idea. We were not prepared for any of this. And you can see Emilio or Lisa in the background walking around, because this was just a test take. So they weren't even hiding. And you can even see me clearly, because I wasn't even hiding either. So you can see me with the sound, like looking at Adam, and Adam's face was, he was surprised, which I saw a few times. I saw the face of, we got something. We got something. Adam would make a lot of faces when he would see his own reflection. He would just go, oh, and then he would smile, and we gotta do that again. The reason why you don't see me or like Adam's reflections too much is because we decided beforehand that we're gonna film the movie in 4:3 format, cutting off the edges. So I'd be here, but since we cut me off, you couldn't see me. And then during the editing, you can actually keyframe, move the image more to the right or to the left, depending on what looks best for the shot. And that's what you gotta do. If you're putting black bars on the top, bottom, or on the sides, you can move the image up and down, just to reframe it, just to make it look better, So he performed this entire routine of walking in, lighting the candles, walking up to the cross and crying multiple times. So I'm sure that was difficult. Like he told us, I'm not going to be able to get the tears out every time, so And then the last bit was improvised. The one moment you tell me is not the moment you...
Everyone's a critic.
I know, but that's the moment you feel was awkward, or like...
This humble interviewer's opinion.
Yeah. The moment when he looks into the camera, when Roberto locks eyes with the viewer, looks straight into their eyes, or what he sees in front of him's eyes, like God, Jesus, whatever he sees, he looks into that person's eyes, or in this case the audience. It wasn't really planned that way because Adam was improvising. What if I move closer to Roberto while we're filming, which he did, and then Roberto looked up to the camera, and then they just stayed there. We actually gotta thank Emilio for that whole bit, because it was his idea to start on Roberto, and he would hold the camera, and then Adam would stand next to the cross, and he would give the camera to Adam, like, so it looks like the camera is on a crane going up. That was Emilio's idea, and he actually held the camera for that portion. So credit goes to Emilio for that bit.
Crane operator.
Yeah, I mean,
Fantastic.
there you go. And that was the last day of filming on Gotland.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So how did the actors feel about the movie as a finished product?
They were actually already celebrating the last day. Because to them it felt like we were wrapping, although we have one more scene left to do. So Magnus invited us to his house, and we had a dinner together. His wife was there, and Roberto was there, and they both held speeches telling us what they've learned and what they experienced and how different this whole movie was, because Roberto is always being seen as the face of the pension commercials. So he thought, nobody ever thought about me playing this character, the mysterious character, who was the dark side. He thought that was such a refreshing thing to do. And Magnus as well, he put so much emotion into his expressions, into his face, and eyes whenever he performs, but they seem to never really capture it in the movies and TV shows he makes. To him, it feels like they cut too fast or don't spend enough time with showcasing what all the dedication he puts into it. So the fact that he got to see himself do all that was very emotional for him. Seeing that they were happy together, working on this movie, because they both became fans of each other in a way, and became good friends. I'm like, yeah, I never thought I'd work with Magnus, but here I am, you know. How old are you again? I don't know, 49. Yeah. Because Roberto was trying to tell us, okay, I still got strength. I'm gonna fight this man in the movie. I'm not too old. And then he asked him his age, and like, yeah. So moments like that, we laughed a lot.
How did you and Adam feel about the finished product?
We felt incredibly proud of what we did, and we believed in this thing so much that we just couldn't wait to show any of the footage to the class or anyone. A few rocky moments, but that's usual. But the material we had felt like gold. That's what it did. Then you had worked on it so much that you saw no faults in it because you were so set in stone with the vision that you're not gonna change the vision. And you saw no faults because it just felt like this was the best managed production we had done. This was supposed to represent our school, represent us, and represent what we had learned in 3 years. There's a lot of stakes, so it was a very fragile project. I just want to say the last day of filming was the same day we went back. Shot the opening. We couldn't get the bus because Elisa's uncle wasn't answering his phone and he was probably busy. We couldn't get him on board. So we had to get a normal car instead. And we had promised Daniel, our good friend Daniel, a part in the movie as an extra in the bus. So he showed up not really knowing how we're gonna fix this, but as soon as we got the car, might as well have him be in the car and push him out of the car as if this mission was very dangerous. We're not gonna drive you the whole way, so get off, Magnus, get off, Alexander. So Daniel played that character who pushes him out of the car. We like the idea of having long takes where we find different angles or shots within the long take. It could go from a close-up of the briefcase to a silhouette shot of Magnus and the moon, and then a wide shot of whole Magnus running away, you know, getting it all in the same take. It was them in the car waiting for our signal to show up, and then we shot the entire bit a few times. And it worked out nicely. I think each time Magnus just felt it was better and better. Because he just liked the work of performing all the way from inside the car to then running away from the camera. He was in character the whole way, and then we're going to capture the best of those moments. And also working with the camera. He thought that was very interesting. But then by the end of the filming, the car was parked on a road that was on its way to a private property. The road was part of the private property, but it just looked like a little road that would lead to the suburbs. We didn't know. There was no sign letting us know. A car showed up with some angry man. What's going on here? What are you doing here? What's that car doing here? And do you know where you are? Do you know where you just parked your car? And he walks towards us as if he's gonna, you know, like give us the blame. I was like, oh no, we're gonna have this at the end of our shoot. But then Magnus, I think he had been taking off his costume because he had just wrapped filming. He didn't hear this guy show up. He didn't hear him complaining. Mm-hmm. He walks up to us to say goodbye and to thank us for the movie. He hugs us, and I see the man just stopping, looking at Magnus hugging us, and then walking away, giving up. You know, Magnus saved us twice, or saved. Yeah, he did. He did. First time he actually saved my life. That was just saving us from the angry man. But the first time he saved my life because this car that we filmed in has different locks than your usual cars nowadays. But here you have to like move up the handle like this. Close it and then move it up. That's how you close the door. I didn't know that. I thought this was enough. Now it's closed. But you gotta do this. Move up the handle. So we were driving. Do you hear that? I'm hearing a lot of like outdoor noise when we're driving. Should it be that way? And I just lean on it a little bit and the entire door opens up. The worst part is most doors open towards this side. This side. but this door opened over here. So all the wind was coming right on the door that would
Keeping
open.
it
Yeah,
open.
keeping it open. So I couldn't even close it. So there's a lot of wind and the entire door opens up and I'm almost falling out of the car. Thankfully Magnus grabbed me and he pulled me in.
Wonderful. So, premiere day.
You want to go to the premiere?
I think that's the best place to go to.
You want to talk about post-production?
Well, very well. Did you feel like it was an ordeal?
Yeah.
Okay, please.
Yeah. Usually I wouldn't, but because usually things go well, but it didn't go well. Post-production didn't go so well. First of all, we realized the sound was bad. Yep. My sound wasn't good because the microphones were not really pointed at their mouths and you heard too much background noise and it was not good. You couldn't really hear the dialogue that well. So, we had to dub the movie. ADR, the entire thing. And all the sounds? Yeah, all the sounds. The car noises, the lighter, the punches, the breathing. Every sound had to be recorded. And then we couldn't really edit the footage on our computers because we had Final Cut. Not a bad program, but the footage we had was too good for the program. We couldn't place the footage in our timeline. We had to use Premiere. And that was the first time I really worked with Premiere. And Adam talked to his uncle, who owns an office building. Whenever we edited the movie, we went to this office. This was a really nice office. It's a filming location right there. Super nice, super fancy. But then came the worst part, or the most challenging part, David. Do you know what that was?
No.
Or showing the rough cuts to teachers and class. Do you know how that went? Do you remember anything of this? Do you remember this time?
Yes.
Yeah.
It did not go as expected.
No. Remember how I said that Adam was very much on the edge of his seat of he couldn't wait to show people what we shot. So was I couldn't wait. We did. It was just silence in the room. We got no real reaction. It was more like people watching and then moving on immediately. So it felt like a bit of a disappointment because we built this up in our minds as this amazing thing, and then reality just hit you that they're not gonna be able to understand everything you went through by just showing the footage. They're just gonna judge the footage for what it is. They're just gonna follow the story based on what you see, and most people at school were used to something that moved very fast, something that was more straight to the point, something that didn't take too much time at the beginning, because we were going for a real mood piece here, you know, like we wanted to make sure that you felt like you were in the car with them and that you drifted away and looked at the road and listened to the music and just had your mind go away from you being in the car, like you were just feeling something else, an atmosphere, a tone. And that's not really what people were used to. When it came to the short films or anything else exam movie wise, we're all just this concept, 10-15 minutes, short and sweet. Don't spend too much time on everything. Not like a feature movie where you do. But we did that with a short film. Spent a lot of time just to make sure that you believed this and you cared, and that was just what we wanted to do. We were not on the same page as the teachers because they didn't want us to do that, or like they thought they were afraid of us not getting into festivals and things like that, because here in Sweden the time limit of 15 minutes or 10 is so common, but this movie just couldn't really be told in that short amount of time, it felt, because then you couldn't cover everything we wanted to cover. The risk would be for it to become shallow. One person was saying, oh, the entire bit of the car was good, but then everything else outside the car at the end, get rid of that. But then other people were saying, you know what, the car bit, yeah, I've seen it, but oh, the ending, that's something, you know. And then someone told me, take out the entire restaurant scene because it's just boring. It's just boring. Like, what? No, it's important because it shows this. It's just boring. Take it out. Take out the scene where they're laughing, singing the song. Why? Because it's just different from when they're not laughing. We couldn't please everyone. But then Daniel was like the one person who was on our page from the beginning. Don't listen to them. Don't let anyone take over. Don't let someone take over your vision. He even told me that from the beginning, like, don't let them take over the movie from you. Thankfully we didn't, because we made our movie, because he was on the same page. I'm happy that Neil cared and that he was there for us. And we just decided in the end that we're gonna stick with our idea, because we have no major constructive criticism pointing towards this direction. Our teacher was saying you can intercut the ending of him killing Magnus with him in the church, intercut between the two scenes, and it got to a point where the ideas were changing what the movie was, and we just gotta do our own movie, and that's it, you know, because we don't get a concrete idea of what's wrong and what's not wrong. Everyone has such different opinions on the Rough Cut that this is becoming difficult. We can't please everyone. Just follow the vision, follow the story. Respect the footage. Respect what the story was. Tell it, no matter what. And then that's what we did. We dubbed the movie. I remember Magnus, because we were going to book in the ADR days, or the ADR day when he was going to come and redo the lines. The scene, you know, where he gets punched. He felt he couldn't deliver the yells, the screams of pain, unless something was actually making an impact on him. How about you, like, push your fist on my chin, yell like, ah! Adam showed up with a tool that because he wanted him to, like, press it with his hand, sort of like the thing in Van Lane, that thing, or in Ariel. He wanted him to press it, so he used his strength, but Magnus misunderstood him, and should I press my hand? Yeah, like, should I, like, hurt? No, Magnus, don't hurt yourself. Like, okay. So that's a really weird moment. Us doing this to him, like, ah, and him yelling, in this little sound recording booth, to see the amount of dedication they put into just voice performance.
Finally, the premiere. Here we go. This time for real. Showing it. The reactions, the feelings, the anticipation, the build-up. This was it, right? No matter what everyone else thought, or this was gonna be the moment.
We were sitting on the front row looking at the movie like this, you know, for the entirety of it. We didn't get time to actually go up on stage and get interviewed that very day, or even talk about it. We just went up really fast and, you know, waved at the audience, and that was it. Roberto was there. It was actually sort of our fault that we didn't get time to go up and talk, because the movie was so long, there was no time left over.
I see.
But you know what? Most of the movies shown that they were on the longer side compared to previous years of XM films. 4 movies were shown, so quite a lot compared to other years. So I don't say it's completely our fault, but we contributed to that. Teachers were happy about it, actually. Most of them went up to us and said that it worked. Like, all those elements that I thought didn't work came into place. And that was very nice to hear from them, that when they actually sat down and just watched it, just look at the story, pay attention, they saw something different. I think the wife of, like, one of the teachers actually started crying at the end of the movie. I didn't expect to hear that, but we were really happy because we got a good response. The very next day we had the graduation, and we showed the movie again at the house. We had friends and family over visiting, and Adam and I didn't even have to get involved or even defend the movie or even talk about anything that happened in it, because they were already doing that for us. I mean, the movie was speaking for itself now. They were arguing about something that happens at the end of the movie. Valid speaks Spanish, and we had no subtitles. And I had asked Adam since the very beginning, I know Spanish, I know what it says, but how is this for you? Because you don't, you know, is this something that would be a problem? And he always told me that no. And nobody else commented on it. Every rough cut showing, nobody brought it up. It didn't matter, apparently. Because Andreas helped us a lot too, you know, he put the finishing touches, at his house because he made the visual effect of the gunshot, which looks incredible. It was his idea to cut together a little montage for the beginning of the movie too, to have opening credits. All Andreas' idea. Even when the sound mix was happening at Andreas' house, that wasn't brought up because subtitles were made for the entire movie except for that bit. So it wasn't until the day of graduation when we were showing it that the argument came up. Someone said that, what if you had subtitles? I want to know what he said. And then some other friend stood up and said, no, we don't need subtitles for that scene. And this friend had nothing to do with the movie, saw it for the first time. And then they started this whole discussion, and we didn't even have to get involved at all. We just sat back and listened, and for the first time, people are responding in such a great way that they're having their own discussion about it without having us bring it up. That was definitely something new.
So now comes the in a way lifeline of a movie after its debut, after its 15 minutes of fame. What happened after the movie was shown? Since then till now, those 3 years, what happened then with it?
Well, what we did was looked into film festivals. We spent some money on that, about 20 euros or something, and sent it to film festivals all over the world. Not only in Sweden, but the Cannes Film Festival, and one in Spain, and one in like South America, and everywhere basically. Everything we could find. Film Freeway or Without a Box, and anything really. It only got into one place, and that place turned out to be a fake festival either way. That didn't even show the movie, so yeah, it doesn't even count. Each time it was very disappointing because somewhere we just wanted to find an audience. Somewhere we just wanted to find people that would watch this and I don't know, be immersed and feel something, feel motivated, feel inspired. We just share the work because it had been our life for 6 months. Like even more for Adam in a way, because for me, like I was working on other movies at the time, as you know, the Clank movie, and I can switch between them a little bit because when it's time for Red Trees, it's time for Red Trees, nothing else. If it's time for Clank, it's time for Clank, nothing else. But for Adam, you know, this was his life for 6 months. It determined, you know, like our well-being and just how we were feeling. If it went bad for the movie, it went bad for us. Or if it went well for the movie, that's when we were happy. So this movie was our life. It was. Unfortunately, 2 years go by and that's when we can't send it to festivals anymore. That's when we reached the deadline of no, you can't do that. That's when we released it on the internet, and we didn't get too much of a response, to be honest. I was thinking we'd get something more said, some more comments, but I think interest dies down after a while. If you had the movie on the shelf for such a long time, then eventually the eagerness from people goes away. That's what it feels like. Some of the teachers were warning us a little bit by saying, "Oh, don't put it up on the internet or YouTube because that's it. That's when you lost, you know, because anyone can take your movie and send it to a festival and win an award and take the award from you." And they said that one of the students who went to Stiliska had gone to a film festival and seen his own movie, and then some other guy walked up on stage and said, "I made this movie and I'm gonna accept the award." And he had said, "Hey, excuse me, that's my movie." And then a year goes by, and then we actually meet the guy at a bar next to where we live, and I asked him, "Is that true? That story of someone else stealing a movie, is that true?" He said, no, that didn't happen. So I feel like who in the right mindset would do that? Take someone else's movie on their internet, independent-wise, and just send it to a festival and try to win money off of it. It feels like, who would do that really? Because there's proof if you go into the movie database and like the names of people are right there, and you know there's ways you can prove that it isn't yours. I feel that the most important thing was just to let people see it, and we waited a little too long. Held out hope that one festival would give us the opportunity to let this thing be seen. I think a lot of them want to go for the faster pace, straight to the point drama movie, and we spent a lot of time on the mood and the tone and the characters just to make it feel like you're there with them. And I don't know, maybe that wasn't the right idea for the festivals or what people seek for in quick entertainment. Maybe we thought too big and should have made it a feature movie and then sent it in, who knows. But that's just This is what happened. I mean, I feel like you have a lot of things to say about the festivals too, because we're on the same page when it comes to that, aren't we?
All right, sure. I suppose I do. Although I think I'm the one interviewing you here, but I personally have lost a very big deal of respect and caring for film festivals. From not even first-hand experience, but from being like an audience member to it, and specifically yours, honestly. I can imagine. I can only imagine how frustrated you and Adam must have been with this whole ordeal. And despite that, I'd like to at least let you know that in some amount of solidarity, I was all there with you because I couldn't believe that this movie didn't get into anywhere and won nothing. One could say that I am biased because I know you and such, but I love this movie. I adore it. I think it's wonderful. I have seen reactions from people just loving it, and that's what I would like to see from people saying it's alright or being like, yeah, that was good. And I'm like, did they not see what I saw? Did they not experience the same movie I saw? What do you mean, okay? But clearly that's what those people must have seen, because I would never believe in a million years they thought it was bad. Or I couldn't believe it. I wouldn't stand for it. So seeing this movie not do anything, not win anything was atrocious. And it has put me off it. It feels like it's too much of a they know what movie they want to win already. They want the story that focuses on this year. Yeah, this is the thing we'll tackle this year. This dramatic angle or this disease or this whatever. And there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting to portray or shine light on things. But when it becomes the point where you're pushing away everything else, then it becomes the problem. And who knows what the real reason was. Maybe those people believed that those movies were actually better than this, and that could have been true. I suppose I can't say that I sat down and watched them to prove a point or to be like, no, they wouldn't have won or nothing. But I don't know. I feel like not even a kudos. You did it. Okay. So no. And as someone, not to drag on, but a year later, with my own exam film, Direct Deposit, I know that the team wanted to send that one to a few places. I, from the bat, said, why? This movie, it was never intended to be an opera of grandiose levels. It was supposed to be what it is, which is a flick that is just simple, fun, easy, go, done. And they're like, no, we want to at least try. I was like, okay, but I am not waiting as long as they waited. I did not want to have any of that, or as long as, you waited. And, obviously he didn't win anything. But I didn't expect it to be honest. It would have been a surprise if he would have. But, I, just from being an audience member in the car crash of misunderstanding of that the Red Trees not getting into anything was it was enough for me to be demotivated behind it. And the people that usually ask, especially people that don't make movies, even people that do make movies, they ask, we're interested in it to film festivals, this is the one, don't show it yet, publish it, if you have no other option. But they don't know what it's like to send movies like this, or a masterpiece in this case, and it's like, no, you don't know what it's like to know you're not going to get an answer. So make a movie first, no matter how good or bad it is. That's not the point. And try sending it, and then see what it's like. Sending a bad movie in, or one that could be better, is different. But sending one of these where this is the tip of the mountain, you've reached Olympus, and nothing, you made it, no one cares. No. Then what's the point? Anyway, please, I'd like to go back to end this segment by going back to you and asking you if you have any final piece of advice, regret, thought, hopes, advice for anything you'd like to say to finish it off. I'd like to give you the floor.
Anything else? I feel like don't be afraid of showing your work. Find the audience that you want to show it to. Also look for constructive criticism, because I say that one regret is that we could have taken out one scene that dragged out the movie a little bit at the premiere. It would just be 1 minute shorter overall. It would be the scene when they're listening to the music and you see this guy. That would be the one scene that could have been moved out from the premiere just to tighten it up.
But a minute, how much does a minute save?
Well, not too much, right?
So.
Again, it was just another one of those scenes that adds to the whole entire atmosphere. Andreas actually told us that I think the opening credits are really important because it sets people up that this movie will take its time and will be a little longer. We took his advice on that, and I think that helps people watching it now. Other than that, go wherever the inspiration takes you, follow that road, make your stories, and you don't have to have the best equipment like we did. Make it the way you want to make it, and again, don't be afraid. Talking about this 3 years later feels odd because it doesn't feel like it had been such a long time actually. So much happened for this movie to be made, and I mean talking about it now because I don't know, I may forget one day. I may forget everything that happened, and then sharing it now is good because it's still as fresh as it can be, even though it was 3 years ago, which is crazy that it was 3 years ago that we started filming this. Because where are we now? What have we done with our lives? I'm gonna take this opportunity to announce my retirement from film.
Oh.
Enough's enough, man. Enough's enough. I'm gonna become a professional rapper.
Okay.
And that's it. That's it.
Nice.
But no. Even though there's a lot more to tell because we wrote that entire backstory and what happened later in the original script, all of that hasn't been made. But I feel happy that this is like a mix of all the best stuff from that original story and our experiences rolled into one. So we have it all here in a way, what we truly wanted it to be. So if you want to expand it one day, then I mean, I don't know. I'm happy with what this is. So it will always be a good memory and a good story of what can be done and what you can do, You have a dream to make your story become a reality, and it is possible. Just talk to people, ask around, don't be afraid. That's the most important thing.
I would like to personally thank Pauli and Adam and Emilio and Elisa and of course the wonderful actors that this wouldn't have been able to be made without them, and everyone else that gave a hand into making this movie be made, because it is a complete wonder. And I recommend you go see it. It's available on this very channel, so you may go ahead.
This wouldn't have been as well made if it wasn't for Adam or Andreas or any of these people that did help on it, because we were all pushing ourselves to the absolute max. Hopefully you will be joining us for the next type of segment like this we'll be making, where we'll talk to different people. If not, it'll be us. Who knows, maybe someone else will be doing the interviewing. I felt like it was right for me to interview, as I did not really have a main or secondary or third hand in the making of this. So despite me being around and discussing or hearing what the movie was like back then, I didn't have an integral part in it. Therefore, I felt comfortable asking questions and prodding, as it would be odd if, let's say, we were discussing a Clank movie and I was just switching back and forth seats to ask myself questions. This was another longy video from us, but a nice one. Hopefully in the future, if we get a hold of other people to talk, not just us. Unfortunately, the Red Trees remaining cast was just not available. It happens. But if in the future that ever becomes I just wanted to say I switched seats here, and I just wanted to say that since it is 3 years since we started filming, and it's all in our minds at the moment, so we wanted to talk about it for that sake. And if Adam wants to talk with us about it and make a video in the future, we'd be more than happy to do that. And anyone else involved in the production, but we don't want to forget anyone. So yeah.
Yep. So thank you again for watching, and have a lovely day.